English by the Nature Method, Chapter 51, the 51st chapter, A London Fog. It's often said that as soon as two Englishmen have been introduced to each other and have said how do you do, they always begin to talk about the weather. This is not because the Englishman cannot find any other subject to discuss, but because he wants to get an impression of the person he's talking to before he starts discussing other subjects. And without doubt, the weather is a good subject for discussion, because there is so much that can be said about it. Many people, for example, are surprised upon coming to London to find that the sun shines at all. They expect to find either fog or rain. They have heard so much about the London fog that they are of the opinion that without a fog London is not London. And Storm had been of the same opinion. But in London he was told that there would be no fog before the autumn. When October came, it happened almost daily that he asked Marshall, "What about that fog? Do you think I'll ever see a fog while staying here?" As a rule, Marshall did not answer that question, but one morning at 7 o'clock he stood, already dressed, at the side of Storm's bed, saying, "Now, get up, young man. As far as I remember, it's you who have such great belief in getting up early in the morning." "Yes, that is so. Only my belief isn't quite so strong when it's 7 o'clock in the morning and I'm still in bed." Storm said sleepily, "Sorry to have called you at this early hour, but you'll no doubt thank me for it, and get out of bed quickly when I tell you that today, at last, we have got our normal autumn weather. There is a thick fog outside, and as far as I can see from our windows, it's even unusually thick." Storm at once jumped out of bed. "What? A fog? You don't say so!" He ran to the window to see for himself, and then turned to Marshall, saying, "You are quite right. Well, a London fog does exist, then?" Marshall: "Yes, in fact it has come about a month earlier than usual, and of course we are not very pleased. Normally fogs come in November." An hour later Storm was sitting with the Marshalls round the breakfast table. The light in the room was on, because it was as dark as night outside. "Storm, how dark it is! So late in the morning. It ought to be light at this time of the day." Mrs. Marshall: "Yes, it's extremely dark, but the fog is really quite unusually thick." Mr. Marshall: "I'm glad to say that as a rule it's not so thick. Sometimes there is a mist early in the morning. A mist is not so thick as a fog. You will also find mists and fogs in the country. The mist is white and clean. This cannot always be said of the fog, which may be extremely dirty in towns with many factories." While discussing the subject of fog and mist, "I'm afraid that Storm and I must leave now," Marshall interrupted his father. "It will take us more time to reach the office today on account of the fog." "All right, my boy, but you interrupted me in telling a little story. You shall have it before you leave." Marshall: "Well, who hasn't got time to listen to a good story? Go on, Dad." Mr. Marshall: "A man that was very drunk, having spent the whole evening drinking beer, called a taxi to take him home. There was a thick fog, and the taxi driver said that he couldn't possibly find his way to the suburb in which the man lived. However, the man offered him £1 if he would try, but the driver would not accept the offer. The man, who was so drunk that he was quite unable to get on a bus or a tram, increased his offer to £5. The driver at last agreed to take him, but said that he must first go upstairs for his brother. "What do you want your brother for?" asked the man. "I need a light in front of the taxi," the driver answered. "Oh, you don't have to go and get your brother. I can walk in front with the light myself," said the man. A few minutes later Storm and Marshall were walking towards the underground station. They could hear different sounds in the middle of the road, but with the exception of a girl on a bicycle, they could see nothing. A second or two later they could hear the sound of a bus moving in the same direction as the girl. Suddenly there was a loud noise, and they heard the sound of the bus stopping, and at the same time the voice of a girl crying for help. They ran to the spot as fast as they could and found the girl lying in front of the bus. While the bus driver was getting down, the bicycle had been smashed. They could see that the girl was hurt, for her left knee was wet with blood. This is the knee, which was beginning to run down her stocking, making it quite red. She is very pale, and as far as I can see, her knee is rather badly hurt. Marshall said to Storm in a low voice. They both noticed that the unnatural color had gone from the girl's face. Something must be the matter with her head, too, for she is holding her hand to it as if in pain, Storm said. Marshall now helped the bus driver to lift the girl up from the ground, and then he asked her, "Are you in much pain?" at the same time trying to stop the blood running down from her knee by tying his handkerchief round her leg. She was doing her best to be brave, for she smiled and said in an almost natural voice, "Well, the pain in my head is bad enough, but I shall be glad if it's no worse than that. The worst thing about it, I think, is that my leg is hurt. I can't very well walk on it without help." "Then my friend and I will walk with you or take you in a taxi to the nearest doctor and have him look at your knee," Marshall said. "Oh, thank you so much." "But it's not necessary to go in a taxi. My own doctor lives quite near, and with your help I can easily walk the few steps to his house." "Bus driver, I think we had better have a policeman look into what has happened too." "Storm, then I'll try to get one, instead of going with my friend and the young lady." Marshall and the girl now left, and Storm went for a policeman, and he had only walked 5 or 6 steps when suddenly one appeared. Storm told him what he knew about the accident, pointing towards the spot where it had happened. The policeman wrote it all down, after which he asked the bus driver, "How did the accident happen, bus driver?" "All I can tell you is that suddenly I saw a girl on a bicycle crossing the street in front of the bus. Before I could stop, the accident had happened. She was pushed over by the bus, but wasn't run over, and that, I think, was the only reason why she escaped death." "Policeman, judging from what you and this young gentleman have explained, her life must have been in great danger. I wonder if she knew that death was waiting just round the corner, so to speak. It seems as if the young lady must have been thinking of anything but buses coming from behind when she was crossing the street, but we'll have to talk to her about all this later in the day or tomorrow." The bus driver now started his bus again, and the policeman, having noticed that Storm was a foreigner, explained in a professional voice, "People ought to know that in a fog like this they are in danger of being run down every time they cross the street. We have many bad accidents of different kinds at this time of the year. Last autumn, I remember, 2 buses ran into each other. 25 people were hurt, 5 of them so seriously that they did not live, but died before they had reached the hospital. Besides, a fire started in one of the buses so quickly that the driver had no time to get out and was burnt up together with the bus. Not a very pleasant way of meeting one's death, I must say. Another bad accident." Storm, who had heard enough of accidents and death, interrupted. "I'm sorry, but I have to leave now to be in time for my work. Good morning." And then he hurried to the nearest underground station. While Storm had been talking to the policeman, Marshall and the girl had arrived at the doctor's and had told him what had happened. "Well, let's have a look at your knee," the doctor said, taking away the handkerchief. "I must say it is worse than I thought when I saw you enter the room. The pain in it is much worse now than just after the fall. I hope it isn't so badly hurt that an operation will be necessary." "No, you need not be afraid of that. There is no reason to use a knife on it. As to the pain, it's the effect of the fall, and it's always worse when some time has passed. But even if it's bad, you may be glad that no operation is necessary. An operation on the knee is a very difficult thing, and sometimes of no effect at all. If the worst comes to the worst, the knee becomes stiff in such cases. But I'll give you something which will take the pain away very quickly." And indeed, what the doctor gave her had a very rapid effect, for in a few minutes the girl felt no pain at all. "Doctor, now take a taxi home and go to bed. I'll come tomorrow and see how you are." The girl, "Won't that be too much trouble to take for such a small matter as my bad knee?" "Doctor, not at all. I'm paying daily visits to a young man not far from where you live." When Marshall had got a taxi for the girl and taken leave of her, He started for the office by bus. When he got off again, he suddenly saw Storm walking in front of him. They walked together, rest of the way to the office, telling each other what had happened since they left the place of the accident. Marshall noticed that Storm used his handkerchief very often. "You seem to have got a rather bad cold, Storm." "Yes, I got it last night because I didn't put on my coat when I went out for a walk, and the fog today has had a bad effect on my lungs and throat. Since you left me, I have been sneezing on account of the dirty air passing through my nose, and I have been coughing too, because of the fog that has got into my mouth and my throat." That's the throat. This is the action of sneezing. "It's extremely unpleasant to know that every time you take a breath, your lungs get filled with dirty yellow fog. I shall be glad when this fog lifts, so that I can once more take a breath of real fresh air, Marshall. We're used to it ourselves, but it's only natural that you should find it very unpleasant. I'm extremely sorry that your cold is so bad that you must spend most of your time with your handkerchief to your face, sneezing or coughing." "Storm, so am I, but I hope it will soon be over. This accident that happened to the girl makes me think of another accident because of bad weather. It was one evening this summer when Mr. Miller, my friends, and I were returning from a trip into the country. The wind began to blow and the rain to fall, and there was a real storm. When the storm had lasted for some minutes, lightning was seen again and again, each time making the sky as bright as day. At the same time, this is lightning. At the same time, the sound of thunder came nearer and nearer, and at last it was so loud that we could hardly hear ourselves speaking. We hurried to the nearest farmhouse and stayed there as long as the thunderstorm lasted. The people at the farm got very nervous when they saw the lightning and heard the thunder, because their maid was out in it. It was not without reason that they were nervous, for when the thunderstorm had passed, she was found in a field struck by lightning and badly burnt. I'm glad to say that she didn't die, but she had to stay in bed for several months. Only the other day I heard that she's all right again now."